All right, so to recap, because that was very poorly done on my part, I made a lot of mistakes. I think I made a mistake right in the beginning. The SAMs are not a telephone service. That was extremely rude of me to say, but I wasn't thinking. I was focused on trying to get the idolatry defined, not the SAMs, and so my focus wasn't on them, and I didn't think about it when I said that, but that was wrong. They are people who provide a telephone service to us, but they are also people. They're not just a service. They're not the service that they're providing. They are people who provide a service to us, but they don't expect anything in return. They're not idols. They're not objects. They're not expecting us to be objects or idols. They don't worship us. We don't worship them. We respect each other's personhood. So I made a mistake there. The SAMs are people, not a telephone, not a telephone service. They're people. So excuse me. I'm sorry, SAMs, for that. I wasn't thinking about what I was saying. So I'm still having difficulty with trying to exactly pinpoint who they are or what they're doing. So sometimes I mess that up. But anyway, when I first started my work, which is what all this is about, is when I first started it, I had as my intention to find my idol. I really just wanted to know everything. I believed that there was a system out there, a logical system, that included absolutely everything. And I had an assumption that I made when I first started that I didn't realize that I had made, which was the assumption that of anti-realism, that there is no objective reality or subjective reality, and that there is no unknown, that everything can be known. That assumption that everything can be known is absurd, and it's also what drove me crazy, and it's also what turned me into an idol worshiper, and it turned me away from God, because I believed that I could predict God, that I could define God, that I could explain God. And it's like, no, I can't, because if I do, then who does that make me? Because no one else here seems to be able to do that. And even if we could, what kind of a machine God would that be? Because that's exactly what it would do. And all forms of idol worship do that to God, is that they attempt to turn God into a machine or an object of worship. So an object of worship is like, they use the proverbial example of the golden calf, dancing around the golden calf. And so that usually gives Christians the impression that anyone who believes in any God other than Christ, or the God of Christ, who Christ worshipped, anybody who believes in any other God than that must be an idolater. And it's like, no, that's not it at all. In fact, the act of saying and believing and acting upon that belief is itself idolatry, because idolatry is not infidelity. Idolatry is not believing in some other God. Idolatry is not believing in the wrong God. Idolatry is turning God into an object of worship. So when someone thinks, for example, and this is something that really did not make sense to me because I was such a deep idolater, I didn't understand this concept, and I thought I could predict God's will. And I thought, okay, I can't watch pornography. I can't get off on lesbian incest or whatever it is, that, or cigarettes or alcohol or pot or tits in general. Because, Jesus said, he who ever looks upon a woman other than his wife with lust has already committed adultery in his heart and is therefore in danger of the judgment. And I thought, okay, well, if Christ said it, then it must be true. And so then therefore I can determine what God's will is. And then therefore I can determine what is good and what is evil based upon that. And therefore I must have to do as Christ said, to cut off my hand because it caused me to sin. I get no excuses. I get no weaning. I have to quit everything cold turkey instantaneously and without any second thought and without any relapse and without any toleration of any, going back and doing it again. So quit cold turkey and never go back. And, and if I die along the way before I get all the way to perfection, then I'll just burn in hell. And these types of ideas were shaping my worldview. And I was a decrepit waste of a person. I could not even function with that kind of mindset. But that's, unfortunately, a lot of people's mindsets. It was also the mindset of the Crusaders and the people that conducted the Inquisition, most of all. The Inquisition is the best example that I can think of idolatry, because even though it claims to be Christian, it doesn't do anything that Christ asked us to do. It doesn't tolerate or bless its enemies. It tortures them and excommunicates them and tells them that it can send them to hell. I mean, it literally acts as if it is God. So it really made me think about what went wrong when I first started doing this project. And I think that was it, was the belief that I could know everything, that somehow I was special and, everybody else just didn't pay enough attention, didn't know enough, didn't get it right, didn't care enough, weren't good enough. And I alone was going to go and find the answer of it all. That every single question that you could ever possibly ask about anything could be answered with this one thing. And that's the one thing that I was looking for. The answer to everything. And I thought that everything could be known because I couldn't see the limits of my own mind. Because I was using my mind to try to find the limits of my mind. If I ever tried to question that, if I ever thought, well, maybe there is something that I can't know, I would think that, and then I would think about that, and I would use my mind to try to answer that question. And it's so absurd to try to use your mind to think about what the limits of your mind and thought are. Because you just keep going around and around and around and around and around. It's like a hamster in that little running wheel. It thinks it's going somewhere, but it's just standing still. It's running like mad, but it ain't going no place. So that is kind of what I was doing for a long time until I finally was helped by the SAMs enough that I could figure out where I was going and where I had been and why. And I made the mistake when I believed that everything could be known, because I then excluded anything that could not be known as real. So I would say that's not real because I can't know what it is. And in the same exact prejudicial, assumptive way that empiricists claim that God isn't real because there's no empirical evidence of God. Well, there's no empirical evidence that I exist. There's empirical evidence that there's a body, that there's a physical form here. Sure. But there's no empirical evidence to suggest that there's a person inside of that body. So for an empiricist to claim that they, as a person, are aware that there is not a God is laughable madness at best. And it can be idolatrous and evil at worst if they don't tolerate anything else. And this is the classic problem on both sides. You've got crusading inquisitors on the Christian side, the religious side, and you've got atheist idolaters on the other side that claim that materia is God and then claim God doesn't exist because they can't explain how it got there. They say it's timeless, right? Because they say, well, anything that existed before the Big Bang, you can't have anything that exists before the Big Bang because you have to have space and time to exist, which is itself an assumption that they can't prove. Where's the empirical evidence to prove that there is empirical evidence? I can destroy the entire argument in one sentence. In one question, I can destroy the entire thought school of empiricism. Show me the evidence that there is such thing as evidence. And all they can do is just flap their arms and shriek autistically because you can't do that. You have to use logic in order to conclude things. Evidence has its place, but its place is in determining not the veracity of a claim, but the empirical soundness of the ability for all people to, and I said ability, not outcome, of all people to have the capacity to agree on some empirical objective phenomenon. But they don't have any ability to force people to derive a particular meaningful explanation for it. And the classic example that I always go to, now that I think about, well, not always, but that I often go to, that I really like, is the debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye. Both Ken Ham and Bill Nye use the same exact evidence, and yet both of them derive completely different answers. And neither of them can prove the other one wrong because they're just twisting around the contextual meaning of the evidence, not the evidence itself. Both of them agree that the evidence is the evidence. The fossil records exist. They both agree that they exist. Ken Ham is a creationist who believes in a young earth and the literal word of God in the Bible, which is another form of idolatry. And Bill Nye is just as crazy and just as stupid or just as evil, whatever you want to call it. He's in exactly the same boat as Ken Ham. He's just sitting on the opposite side of the stern, if you will. And he is, saying that everything is made out of material and that the only real existence that is ever existent is the physical, empirically observable world that science can be used to, what would you say, measure. And both of them are wrong for exactly the same reason, which is that they both exclude the possibility of the other one being right by default. And they take this unfalsifiable presumptive assumption that the other one is wrong before, during, and after their debate. So neither one of them can change their position. And yet they're having this debate about it. And it's just so funny to see it because it's like this thing was never going to go in any direction other than the way that it is being unfolded and revealed before you, the way that it happened. Because Bill Nye has absolutely no justification for believing that everything is empirical. And Ken Ham has no ability to believe and no ability to justify that everything on Earth existed, literally everything in existence, I should say, is 5,000 years old or less simply because the Bible said so. They're both exactly equal in the context of them being laughably absurd and completely reductive in their mode of worldview, that they both attempt to artificially reduce the complexity that is inherent within reality to a fixed point of knowledge that they claim encapsulates absolutely everything. So Bill Nye takes the presumption as an empiricist that absolutely everything that ever was, ever will be, ever could be is all 100% encapsulated in science. Therefore, if anything is unempirical, unscientific, beyond the realm of physical data being rendered, then it must not be true and it must not exist and it must not have any bearing at all on anything. And it's just some frivolous, superfluous nonsense that just somehow found its way in through the door, didn't get the memo, didn't get the invite, didn't realize, didn't take the hint that it wasn't welcome here, kind of a thing. And it's kind of cute because I don't think that Bill Nye would ever kill anybody over this. He still tolerates Ken Ham. I mean, he would shake his hand and everything. But it's just funny. It's almost kind of adorable that he cannot understand where Ken Ham is coming from. And he's just like, he's got his little bow tie on and he's just like, what are you doing? He's just like laughing at this guy. And Ken Ham, ironically, is kind of doing the same thing with Bill Nye. He's like, what the you're a scientist and you don't know this shit? And they're both doing that to each other. They're both laughing at each other like, you fool, what the hell are you doing? No, they're not angry. They don't hate each other, but it's just funny. It's like, well, both of you are the same fucking way. You're two black people that both belong to the Ku Klux Klan. You can't be here, you're black. You can't be here, you're black. It's like, it's hilarious. But it's, you know, it's kind of like Abbott and Costello. It's funny. But anyway, so the whole thing, the whole problem that I had was I believed, and this is my absurd bow tie moment, is I believed that, you know, everything could be known. Now, I didn't believe, and I never have and never will, well, maybe I will one day, but I don't now believe, and I never have before, believe that everything is just rendered as materia and that the only way that you can know everything is through science. I've never believed that. I've never been a realist. I've always been an anti-realist. Pretty much my entire life I've been an anti-realist, and that's really more or less a lot to deal with the fact that I grew up in a tiny little room with nothing in it. So it really didn't benefit or behoove of me, and I don't think I could have even functioned being an empiricist realist, living in an empty room with nothing in it, and growing up in an empty room. I mean, it doesn't really make much sense to place much emphasis on physical objects if the physical objects around me are so static and so irrelevant that they don't really have anything to do with anything. I mean, I wasn't even allowed to read when I was a kid. I would get grounded, is what my mom would call it, and I would not even be allowed to read books. That was considered breaking the grounding. And most people, when they say grounding, they mean that they might take away their kid's phone for a few minutes, and that's what they think grounding is. What grounding is, or at least was for me when I was a kid, was there weren't any phones, so there was nothing to take away there. No friends, total social isolation. And I don't mean like normal grounding where it's like, well, you can't go over to someone else's house or you can't talk to so-and-so on the phone tonight. I mean, ever. Like, I can count on one hand the number of times that I had people over when I was a child. The entire time that from birth to 18, I can count on one hand how many times I've had people over to my place. That is an entirely different level of social isolation than just having your phone taken away from you for a day. I didn't have the ability to have friends see me. Like, there was no room for social interaction of any sort for long periods of time, months on end, without having any person to interact with other than my mom and the people that I was in class with at school. But when I came home, there was nothing in it. I grew up in an empty house with nothing in it. So consequently, or maybe because of some other reason before I was born, I chose that. I don't know. But for some reason, my environment when I was a child was extremely bereft of any external empirical phenomena or change or interactions. I didn't have any interactions with anyone or anything for the most part. I just sat in my bed and I looked up at the ceiling and I daydreamed. And I got really, really powerful at daydreaming. And that's where I spent all of my time. That's where I put all of my focus and my attention. And it's still true to this day. So partly because of that, my environment kind of reflected that back to me, that the physical world doesn't really matter. The physical world can basically just be ignored. And then we just focus on thoughts and just focus on mental phenomena and logic and reasoning and things like that. Things that I can do in my head without, interacting with the physical world at all. That became my idol. That became the thing that everything revolved around for me. And so by the time that I was an adult, I was so used to that I really didn't think there was an empirical reality. I thought that the physical world was an illusion, kind of like Maya. It's like it seems to suggest to me that it's there, but it isn't. It doesn't have any actual substance behind it. It only appears to have a substance because of my perception or lack thereof of the truth, of reality, of things outside myself. So I didn't believe, and I still question, whether there even are empirical objects. And the fact that I can question that and still function is kind of interesting to me. I've always thought that was really weird, that you don't actually have to believe that objects exist. You can take the view as an anti-realist that there might be empirical objects, but we know that we can't ever know what they are, because the knowledge that we have about something can't be embedded in something. There is no such thing that is self-evident. There's no such thing as picking something up and saying, I know everything about this because I picked it up. Well, I might know what its color is. I might know what its weight is. I might know what its size is. I might know what its volume is. I might know what its chemical makeup is. But at some point I run out of knowing what it is. I don't, for example, know what redness is. I wouldn't be able to define it for you. I can remember subjectively experiencing it, but I can't tell you what that experience is. I can't put it into words. I don't know what the chemicals themselves are made out of. You could say, well, it's this and this atom and this and this. And then, okay, well, what are those made of? Well, those are made out of subatomic particles and blah, blah, blah. And those are made out of quarks. And those are made out of mesons and bosons. And those are made out of some kind of an arrangement of Higgs bosons or something like that. And eventually you run into the zero-point energy field. And then when you try to describe what that is, then you just say, well, it's the constant fluctuation of the vacuum. And it's like, well, that doesn't even make any fucking sense. It's a vacuum. How could it fluctuate? Well, because it's the zero-point energy. And then you run out of things to say. And it's sort of like the thing about the Big Bang. It's this hard line. And physics has a very hard line. Objectivity has a very hard line that you cannot cross in between objectivity and relativity, especially because the objects that we perceive in the world are so independent from our knowledge about them that they existed before us knowing about them, and they'll exist long after we forget about them. What that means is our knowledge about them is totally divorced from them themselves, to the point where it is possible for a person to be perfectly functional, interchangeably functional with an empiricist on a lot of tasks, most notably just surviving. You can survive without believing in objects simply by saying, well, what I perceive as an object is simply a wiggliness, like Alan Watts put it, because he also didn't believe in empirical objects. He said, everything is made out of a bunch of different nothings, and that there are no real edges to anything. That if there ever were edges, they wouldn't be static, discrete, sharp, and resolute. They would be fluid and dynamic and blurry and interactive and changing all the time in unpredictable ways. And there's a magic and a mystery to existence that can't be left unsaid or unknown or unreflected upon, unaware, whatever. So when I first started this whole work on trying to define, explain, and predict how everything began, because it was really an ontological thing. It had other ambitions after that, but its main course, its main purpose was to define and explain and predict the exact moment of origin of reality. Because like Aristotle said, if you know what the origin of something is, then you know what the cause is. So I was trying to isolate the cause of existence. Why does existence exist? That was the whole point of the work. And I've been trying to do this pretty much since my adulthood, since my early adulthood. I would say I've been working on it ever since I got out of the military. Right after I started going back to college, that's when I think I started working on it. So early 20s. And that means I've been working on this thing for about 15 years. And what I have found in that 15 years is immeasurably valuable to me as an anti-realist, because I've learned so much about the limits of relativity. And I like to think of the same caliber as a physicist learning about the limits of physics and objectivity. So there's a limit. Relativity is very special, just like objectivity is special and subjectivity is special. They all have their own special, unique, endemic mode that they are operating by. And you can kind of pick this up when you start talking to somebody for a while. You'll start picking up where they sit. If they are referring pretty much everything that they believe back to a relativistic field, then they're an anti-realist. If they're referring to the objective field, then they're a realist. And if they're referring to a subjective field, they might be a postmodernist. They might be an artist. They might be a religious person, like a priest or a priestess. They might be a musician, something like that. That they refer back to their intuition as the final judgment on things. Their feelings are the things that end up making the final judgment for them on what is real and what isn't real, what is true, what isn't true. So when I doubt myself, where do I go to find my answer? I go to deductive reasoning. I go back to deductive logic. So I am a relativist. I believe in relativity. That's my thing. That's where I stand. That's where my feet are firmly planted. They always have been, as far as I know. And they probably will remain that way for a long time. Maybe not, I don't know. But at least for the moment, that's where I'm standing, is in the field of relativity. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all have to stand somewhere. I believe Alan Watts was either in the realm of relativity, because he does use logic a lot, but he also might be in the field of subjectivity, because he also uses intuition a lot. So I don't know. I mean, I'll never know where someone else stands, but I know where I stand. And when I doubt myself, when I doubt something, when I go trying to prove something to myself, where I go is logic. And I don't pay attention to my feelings, because I know that feelings can change and they can be wrong and they can lead us to do things that we shouldn't be doing. And that's why I ended up having this problem with accepting that God is not a tyrant and is not absolutely intolerant of my subjective bent, that I have my addictions. That doesn't mean that God's just going to exclude me from the kingdom of heaven because I'm an addict. But it does mean that I need to work on my addiction, but it doesn't mean that I have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to ever get saved, or if I die while being an addict, that I'm going directly to hell automatically. And that's something that I used to believe in, and I still question it. I still worry that if I relapse, I'm going to go to hell because I didn't repent that day. I didn't repent yet. And so then I didn't fill the quota that I was supposed to fill. And so now I have to go down into the depths of hell because I didn't fill out the proper bureaucratic paperwork and say the appropriate number of Hail Marys and all that shit. So where people stand matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. It's not absolutely exclusive of all change. It just means that's where the person tends to go to make sense of the world around them. But even I have my limits. And now I realize that just because I stand there doesn't mean that I say that there isn't any other place to stand, or that I am absolutely unequivocally right about absolutely everything. And I don't exclude God, who doesn't fit in relativity. I can't encapsulate God in an idea. I can't encapsulate God in any definition. Even if I put the definition that God has no definition as the definition of God, paradoxically saying, well, I know who God is because I know that God can't be defined, and so therefore anything that I define must not be God. I actually can't even go that far, because God is absolutely unknowable, is not a point of knowledge, cannot be made into a point of knowledge, cannot be encapsulated by any mind or any thought or any system, regardless of whether that system is objective, subjective, or relative, or something else. It doesn't matter what that system is. That system can't be proven or disproven to be God, because God is unknowable. So we can't even disprove whether or not God is there. We can't say that this pen that I'm holding in my hand isn't God. I can't say that because I don't know that. It could be that God is hiding in this pen and he's just waiting for the right moment for me to stop paying so much attention to my own life and pay attention to God enough to realize, oh, wow, God is actually hiding in this pen. It's possible. I can't say that that's not possible because I can't know who God is or where God is or anything like that. Even to the point of saying, that is something that I don't know. I don't even know that. I can't even say that it's a fact that God is unknowable. I can't say that because, again, I believe that God is absolutely unknowable. So I can't even know that God is unknowable. It's kind of a trip to think about, but it's pretty simple. It just means that I leave everything open. I don't make a final judgment. It could be God. It could not be God. It could be true. It could not be true. I could be right. I could be wrong. They could be right. They could be wrong. I never take that final step of saying, nope, they're absolutely wrong. There's no saving them. There's no point in even trying to have this debate. There's no point in even questioning anything. There's absolutely just a waste of time if I even proceed. If I say stuff like that, I've already committed idolatry and I've already closed myself off from the possibility of learning something new and growing and becoming, more evolved and having a richer life and a richer subjective experience, a sharper relative mind, and a healthier objective body and physical life and environment. So the main point is exclusion. If I exclude things for myself in my life, in my example, the most resonant example for me is the exclusion of all unknowables as irrelevant, non sequitur, unreal, doesn't matter, valueless, complete waste of fucking time. I don't even need to know about that stuff, kind of a thing. If you say, I don't even need to know about X, then you are an idol worshiper in the degree to which you say that. When you say, I don't even need to know about this person, this thing, this event, I already know then you formed a prejudicial assumption. And that prejudicial assumption is a logical fallacy. By nature, it cannot be true. Because even if you derive a conclusion from it, the way you derived it was fallacious. It was invalid. It was disqualifying. It's like playing soccer, but you use your hands to throw the ball into the net. It's like, no, you can't do that. Well, the ball went into the net. Well, I got a point. No, you can't use your fucking hands. You got to only use your feet to get it into the goal. And if you use your hands, then it's disqualifying. By the time that you quote unquote scored, the scoring isn't even there anymore because the way you did it broke the rules, so you can't be awarded the point. So when people do that, when they say, oh, I already know, no, it's impossible. Oh, no. When they do that and they shut down, that's a problem in and of itself. That's about the only time that we can say, no, I know that that's not good. Because if you start doing that, then you're wrong, because there's going to be something that you miss. And I don't care what you're picking. It's like the empiricists. Oh, I must be right because everything in physical reality says that I'm right. Really? Well, prove that. You can't. Where's the evidence that proves your evidence is evidence? It's like, well, that's circular. No shit. That's because it's all stuck in the same system. You can't use a system to prove itself. It's the same problem that they have with math. You talk to an empiricist, a hardline empiricist, oh, I don't believe in anything that doesn't physically exist. What about math? You don't believe in math? Does math not exist because it's not physically present in front of you? Do numbers not exist because you can't physically touch them? Do you not exist because I can't physically touch you? I can touch your body, but I can't touch you. If I could, there would be no difference between your dead body and your living body. Would you argue that you still are you when you're dead? I mean, you force them into a position where they have to just crumble and the entire thing just falls to pieces. And then the danger in that is that you can do that to every single paradigm in existence. You can dissolve any paradigm into nothing and claim that it's absurd and stupid. You can attack and criticize literally everything around you to the point where it unravels and becomes worthless and valueless. Should you do that? Obviously not. But there are some times when you have to, like in the form of crusades or an inquisition or some other violent outburst or something like that. Then yeah, you do. You have to step in and you have to make a choice. You have to make a judgment. You have to say, no, I'm going to save this person's life. I'm going to save this person's sanity. I'm going to save this person's ability to be themselves, their soul, to the best that I can. But I can't do that by doing what they did. I can't kill the other person for killing that person. I can't steal from someone else because they stole from me. I can't lie to a liar and then expect that to be in keeping with the truth. It doesn't work like that. So every time that someone does run across somebody else that is closed like that, where they have a closed position, it doesn't mean that you attack that position and dissolve it, because then you're dissolving a dissolution. It won't work. They'll just they'll just keep going the same way that they've been going. In fact, they'll be even galvanized further than they already were. It'll make it worse. So what you have to do is you have to open it up and you have to say, well, I agree that that the physical world is necessary as part of our view, but I also believe that there's more than that. So not only is that there, not only do I appreciate and respect that position, I believe that there's other positions that are equally respectable, and I tolerate and I deeply appreciate them to the point where I can steel man their argument, and that I give it at least a possibility for consideration when I try to make a conclusion. And of course, this is going to be inside of myself. I can't determine whether or not someone else has or has not done that, but I can see it within myself and try to make adjustments. I can see it in other people. I can try to make adjustments there. But I can never get to a point where I am absolutely certain about anything. If you run across somebody that has absolute certainty, be very afraid, because that person is unhinged and they are going to run into a brick wall somewhere, because reality is not closed. It is open. And if it were closed, it wouldn't move. It wouldn't change. There would be no energy, and therefore there'd be no mass and no matter, and therefore nothing would exist. So it is not possible for reality to be closed. It has to be open. But how, where is that line? I don't know. I don't know if God is in subjectivity, out of subjectivity, between relativity and objectivity. I don't know where God is there. I don't know if it's all the above, none of the above. I don't know about that, but I do know that we have to have some model for explaining and defining and predicting things, because otherwise we wouldn't do anything. We would just sit there and rot and die. There'd be no difference between us and a rotting corpse. We have to use it, but we have to have enough faith in our own position to take it, but not so much that we take others away from them. I can say that I'm right, but I can't say others are wrong. I can say I'm going to walk this path, but I can't break everybody else's legs so that they can't walk anywhere else. I can plant my roses in the rose garden, but I can't nail someone to the cross and nail this fucking hammer, the crown of thorns in their forehead. But I can plant my roses in my rose garden. But I can't take those roses and then smash them into someone's forehead and make them wear a crown of thorns. There's a limit between defending myself and attacking someone else. And this is the biggest problem of our age right now, is telling the difference between self-defense and attacking someone else. Because people nowadays, I swear it's almost ubiquitous across the entire world, there are people that claim that punching someone is defensive. And it's like, no, you can't use offense as defense. But they don't see it that way. They see offense and defense as being identical. There's no difference to them between defense and offense. It just means that they'll do anything and everything in order to protect or preserve, preserve so-and-so, myself, my loved ones, whatever, my country. I'll do anything to save so-and-so. That's what they think when they think of defense. They think preservation of whatever it is that I'm defending. They don't think about attack versus defend. They don't think about offense versus defense. They just think about, I'm going to do whatever it takes to preserve this thing. Even if it means killing everyone, even if it means murder, theft, rape, lying, cheating, stealing, murdering, raping, all the above, in order to preserve this thing. And that, again, is idolatry, because it's saying, I just know that that's somehow true. I just know that that's somehow defensible, that that's a moral right that I have to murder and rape and kill and pillage and plunder and annihilate and obliterate everything, as long as I believe that it will preserve this one thing. And that's an idol. And you can turn your family into an idol, and you can turn your friends into an idol, and you can say, I will bury a body for you. I will lie. I will cheat. I will steal. I will kill for you. That is far well above and beyond love. That is far well above and beyond what Jesus did for his apostles. Jesus didn't kill anybody for his apostles. And yet Jesus said, the way that I'll know you is if you love one another as I have loved you. And Jesus never killed or stole or lied in order to preserve his apostles, did he? So it isn't Christian to kill child rapists. It isn't Christian to kill murderers. It isn't Christian to steal and lie and cheat for your friends, not to go to jail or whatever it is. And I would argue that it isn't even moral, because if you commit an immorality in order to claim morality, that's self-contradictory and therefore invalid. So if I commit some sin, if I commit some evil act, and then claim that the reason that I committed the evil act was for a good intention, everybody already knows how to finish that. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Hitler had good intentions. Does that mean that all his evil acts are absolved and that they're fine and everybody should be like Hitler? No, but yet everyone is like Hitler. They hate all the people that disagree with them without understanding why they disagree. They think they know where the real right of all rights are, that if anybody took any position that was ever against what they take themselves, that the other person must be put to death, that can't even be tolerated, that are complete waste of existence. That's where most people stand. It's our natural mode of being as humans, as animals, as wretched little dung beetles on the earth. That's what we do by default. Only because of God and our faith in our fellow people do we ever get to a point where we can finally stop doing that age-old, ancient, primordial eye for an eye mentality bullshit where we say that other person over there is a child molester and therefore they have no rights. They should have never been born. They should be killed. Their family should be killed. Anybody who ever talked to them should be killed. If you ever look at this person and don't attack them, then you should be killed. That's the same thing that the Nazis did. That's the same thing that the Jews did back in Jesus' time. It's the same thing that they did to Socrates. It's the same thing they did to Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., excuse me. It's the same thing that they do every single fucking time to every single martyr that ever lived. Anybody that ever believed in peace got killed for it. There's never been a single human that ever lived on this planet that actually served the purpose of galvanizing people for non-violent opposition that survived it. Every single human that has ever advocated for passive resistance has died. And they didn't die naturally. They died from somebody killing them, or they went through some torturous event and probably died earlier than they should have because of that torture, or something else happened to them. Every single one of them. Mandela went to prison. Gandhi went to prison. Jesus got killed. Socrates got killed. None of them ever just, go through that passive resistance without any scars. They go through some torture and some shit, and they usually get killed doing it. And that's an example right there. That's the evidence right there. That no, most of us don't get it right. I'm not even getting it right now because I want to attack those people for attacking other people. And it's the same thing. And it's just by our nature. I'm not any different. I'm right there in the same boat. I'm rocking it just as much as everyone else is. But I'm aware of it and I'm seeing myself rock it. And I'm like, I shouldn't do that. I should tolerate that. I get it. I've been there. I've wanted to kill child molesters too. I've wanted to kill my mom. I've wanted to kill a bunch of people. I'm not a saint. I've wanted to kill people before. I think everybody, if they're really honest with themselves, can admit that they've all wanted to kill someone before. So even though we know it's wrong, we know that we shouldn't kill people, but we want to because we're people. We're just humans. We're just doing the best we can. So we have to give each other the benefit of that doubt. And we have to make sure that we're not excluding people from anything, really. I mean, excluding others from being right. Excluding excluding ourselves from recognizing that someone else with a different viewpoint could be right. When we get to a point where we're absolutely certain, because that was Hitler's destruction, in my opinion. I think what really made him the evil man that he was his inability to believe in an opposing viewpoint's validity, where if you opposed what he believed, you must be wrong simply because you opposed it, not because you had anything wrong with what you were saying or believing or doing or being, but because you opposed his belief. So when somebody claims that the mere opposition to a position is in itself, in the opposition itself, evidence of its own error, that's when you run across idolatry and hatefulness and intolerance. And that's what leads to inquisitions and crusades and things like that, and race purging and stuff like that. All that stuff is the same, different symptoms of the same disease. And that disease is pride. And the pride comes from believing that I already know everything there is to know about whatever it is. It's exhaustive to the point where I don't even need to check to make sure, because I already know. I don't even need to question whether or not this order is a good order, because I'm the one who gave it, or mein Führer is the one who gave it. So I can't question it. I can't think for myself. I can't place any value in the opposite view from the one that I'm being presented with. So if I get into that position that I'm wrong, and I need to check that and make sense of it, because when I say, all these people that committed the Crusades, they're all going to hell and they should burn in hell and die, and maybe we should just kill them off before they ever get born. When I think these thoughts in my silly little head, I'm just like them. And so I have to give them that tolerance, because an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. There is no sin that no one on earth didn't commit. There's no way that someone could ever cast the first stone. He who was sinless cast the first stone. And not even Jesus threw one. The only guy there that was sinless, and he didn't throw one. He's telling other people not to. See? So there's never a justifiable reason of casting the first stone, because if I throw a stone at you for being a hateful asshole, then you could throw a stone at me for being a hateful asshole. If I throw a stone at you for committing adultery, then you could throw a stone at me for committing adultery, or whatever else it is. And I think Jesus said this too, or someone in the Bible did. I vaguely remember every sin is a form of hypocrisy. That no matter what sin that you think is so evil and so wretched and so bad, you did it yourself, or you have some inclination to do that, or you could yourself do that under some duress, under some condition. There would be some condition that exists in which you yourself would commit the most atrocious acts that you can imagine. And the easiest one that I use is, what if there was some madman that had his finger on the nuclear warhead button, and they say, I'm going to press this button and kill us all, or else you do this atrocious act. Would you then do that act? A lot of people would. And then for the rest of them that are holding, no, I would still let everyone die, because it's just the principle that you just don't do those things. And it's like, okay, well, for those people, then what if it was, what if God told you to do it? What if God said, I need you to trust me like Abraham, and I'm going to tell you to kill your own kid as a test of your faith and your obedience to me. And I'm going to tell you to commit this atrocious act. As God, I order you to commit this abominable act, whatever that act is. And that will usually compel the other people that say, well, I would hold out. If it was just killing everybody on earth, I would still let them kill everybody, and I wouldn't commit the evil act, because out of principle, just because everybody's dying doesn't mean that I have to commit something evil. God will judge me based off my principles and my character and my integrity, not off of the effect that it happened to have. Otherwise, we're just all calculating things. So for somebody that says that, what if God told you to do that evil act? Would you then disobey God? And that will usually compel them also. And so, like I say, and then if they're a nihilist and they believe neither in the effects of the physical world nor in the metaphysical God that created it, if they don't believe in either of those, then they're a nihilist, or they have some other view that I have yet to think of that I don't have a good example for. But I believe that every single person has some condition under which they would commit any given act. Raping kids, killing goats, sacrificing their own children, all kinds of things. Either if everybody was going to die unless you did it, you'd probably do it. Or if God himself ordered you to do it, you'd probably do it. So there's always a condition by which someone will commit any particular act. When we recognize that, then we recognize that people are not the acts that they commit, because even I would do some atrocious thing if I were so compelled by my environment to do so, or some other entity other than myself to do so. So if that's true, and I believe it is, then there really isn't enough room for us to condemn or judge someone for committing that evil act, because there is some condition in which I would have done the same thing. And I can find that condition. And hopefully I can find that condition before I judge that other person or myself, because I realize that there's limits to everything. And we all make mistakes. And there are conditions of duress under which any person would commit any act. And so, I forgot to turn my phone off. And so that's why we can't judge each other. And that's why we can't exclude the possibility of being wrong, because we don't know everything. And that one thing is the irony of the end of this talk is the origin of my work was the assumption that I could know everything. And it seems to me that the terminus of my original work is, where I close the book on this, is that I recognize that I don't know everything, and that it is not possible for anyone to ever know everything. So it comes full circle, and it finally resolves the original problem that I had. I can't ever know everything. There is no such thing as a theory of everything that will just tell me everything about everything. There's always going to be something that's missing. And because of that, I now have the ability to be free from judging myself for every single sin that I commit, especially with my addiction to pornography. And I don't have to think that I'm going to go to hell just because I watched two chicks banging each other. It's not necessarily going to send me to hell if I just didn't say enough Hail Marys after I did it, or that I did it at all. I can't predict what God's going to do with me. And I can't say that by following a particular set of lettered rules, like Moses' laws, that I'm automatically given a seat in heaven. If I say to God, you had best let me into heaven because I followed all 10 commandments and I repented for every sin I ever committed, and so I bought my ticket to heaven. Here's my ticket, Mr. Train Man. Let me get on this train and let me go to the station. God isn't a train conductor. He's not sitting there checking for tickets. You got your ticket? You got your ticket? Oh, you didn't buy your ticket? Oh, I can't let you on the train. Nope, fuck you. Bye. We're leaving. Sucks to be you. Oh, well, I couldn't afford it. I don't care. You didn't buy your ticket. Well, you don't have a ticket. You're not getting on the train. Fuck you. Get out of here. That's the problem that I had originally had. And I inherited this problem from the warped version of Christianity that most people believe in nowadays, which is they believe in a ticket master God. They believe that God is a ticket master and that you have to buy your ticket in order to get to heaven. And they don't care how you get the ticket. You could steal the fucker. And, it doesn't matter. I got my ticket. What? It doesn't matter that that I force my children to go to church every Sunday, even though I know they hate it and they don't learn anything from it. But, hey, you know what? I forced them to go to church, so that's my ticket and I get to go. Because I stole my children and their ability to live. I held them under duress and I told them, little Jimmy, little Susie, you will go to church because you don't have a choice because you can't survive on your own. So you can either die or you can go with me to church. And then I get to go to heaven because, I defended God. Yeah, I threatened to kill my own children. And so, I defended God. And for anybody that's listening to this, if you think that self-defense consists of lethality, of killing someone, if you think killing someone is self-defense, if you're a Christian, slap yourself for being a Roman, because that's what the Romans did. They killed Jesus to defend themselves against his political subversion. If you're a Jew, slap yourself for the same reason. You're a fucking Roman. You did exactly the same thing. If you're somebody that doesn't appreciate the Socratic method, same thing for you, and on and on and on. And after I get done with all of the martyrs that have died for peace because somebody decided to assassinate them, then you'll realize that it's the same argument that those of us who have tried to defend the position of murder is defense, tell that to Dr. MLK. And with that, good night. Damn it, and I fucked that up too. Fuck my ass.